Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Count down to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now, only at BJ's.
Welcome to the Wellness Transcription Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Patrick Gurley. Are you guys ready to grow together in our understanding of all things health and wellness? If so, you found the right podcast for you. Each week, we will give you access to evidence-based nutrition and lifestyle content that you can use to help improve the long-term health and wellness goals for you and your entire family. You can find us on any of your favorite podcasting platforms, so please don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the show so you don't miss out on any of our weekly episodes or special guest interviews. Now let's get into today's episode. The first episode of the Wellness Transcription Podcast, I've got our first real guest on, and he's near and dear to my heart because I'm biased. He's my dad. But I'm going to give you a brief background on Dr. Bill Gurley real quick. We're going to be talking about dietary supplements today. It's a hot topic that not a lot of people have expertise on, but he's one of the leading experts in the country when it comes to this stuff. So Dr. Gurley is a professor and principal scientist at the National Center for Natural Products Research at the University of Mississippi. He's also the chair of the University of Mississippi Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. Prior to joining NCNPR in 2019, Dr. Gurley was a professor of pharmaceutical sciences at UAMS, the University of Arkansas for Medical Science in Little Rock, Arkansas, where he taught me in pharmacy school. He was the vice chair of the UAMS Department of Pharmaceutical Sciences, the chair of the UAMS Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee. Dr. Gurley has been conducting basic and clinical research on various aspects of dietary supplements, supplement efficacy, and safety for almost 30 years. His research on Ephedra-containing dietary supplements was used by the FDA to remove those products from the U.S. market back in 2004. He was the first investigator to systematically evaluate herb-drug interaction potential for popular dietary supplements and then assess the clinical relevance of those interactions. Accordingly, his research team was the first to document serious clinical repercussions of herb-drug interactions involving St. John's wort. Dr. Gurley's research interests include pharmacokinetics, mechanisms of herb-drug interactions, toxicity of multiple component herbal dietary supplements, phytochemical modulation of human drug metabolizing enzymes and transport proteins, and human phytochemical disposition, all of which have been subject of more than 200 peer-reviewed scientific publications. He's also a member of the United States Pharmacopoeia's expert panel on dietary supplements and is an advisor to the American Botanical Council and a co-editor of the American Herbal Products Association's Botanical Safety Handbook. He sits on the editorial boards for the journals of Clinical Pharmacology and Therapeutics, Phytomedicine, HerbalGram, and Clinical Therapeutics. Dr. Gurley received his Bachelor's of Science in Chemistry from Tennessee Tech University and a Bachelor's of Science in Pharmacy and a Ph.D. in Pharmaceutics from the University of Tennessee Health Science Center in Memphis, Tennessee. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. Dad, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. This is the first real special guest interview, and I couldn't think of a better person to have on. So I appreciate you being here.
Well, it's absolutely an honor, Patrick. I'm very proud of you. You've done yeoman's work with regards to getting out the word to the public about the real science and interpreting both good science and the bad science that's associated with dietary supplements. So my hat's off to you. Not a lot of people are doing this, And I think it's a great service to the public to allow them to make sense out of all the craziness that's out there regarding dietary supplements. So
You taught us in school. I mean, they don't really do a great job as far as curriculum goes for prepping you on dietary supplements, and we get asked that all the time. So it's definitely an area I think is for pharmacists that it's kind of daunting because we're like, I don't know this part. So it's cool to have someone to grow up my whole life with someone who's used to these kinds of things and does this research has made it easier for me.
yes, raise a great point, and that is it's difficult enough for healthcare professionals, whether you're a pharmacist or a nurse or a physician, to keep up with all the conventional medications and the potential interactions with those, and so now you throw in tens of thousands of dietary supplements and it's just an overwhelming task to kind of get your head around. And so a lot of healthcare professionals either ignore them altogether or just say no, they're all horrible and don't take them at all. They're one, they don't have any they don't have any efficacy, or they're unsafe, which is just the farthest thing from the truth. The vast majority of dietary supplements are very safe. Uh, Sometimes their efficacy can be questionable, and we can get into that a little bit later as we go forward. But it behooves pharmacists to understand what it is that you're carrying on the front end of your store, because a lot of pharmacists carry dietary supplements, and it always has surprised. Yes, they carry these products in their stores, but oftentimes they know very little about them, and so it's up to people like yourself and myself to try to educate not only the healthcare professionals, but also the public with regards to some of the good things and some of the not so good things about dietary supplements.
Yeah, I'd say a vast majority of our business where I work here in Austin is supplement consults. So we do them on a daily basis. And occasionally, since I've started working there, there's been more collaboration between the wellness department and us in terms of drug interactions, and having those conversations is a crucial piece that I think
Right.
is missed a lot of time.
Right.
But again, there's this kind of natural conception of, okay, supplements aren't that bad because they're natural, right? They can't really hurt me. Now,
Well,
whereas drugs, people are kind of skeptical still. What side effects am I going to have? Are they going to work? Especially now with how different drugs and vaccines and stuff have gone recently, that skepticism is just getting higher. Whereas supplements, people are more comfortable by maybe not being
yeah,
familiar with
exactly.
them.
Yeah. Well, so what I want to, as you well know, and what a lot of pharmacists understand, is that the vast majority of medications, up until about 10 or 5, until about 15 or 20 years ago, had their origins in natural products. So, I mean, half the medications that are on the market now are either natural product, or either isolated from as natural products or derivatives of natural products. And so if you have that concept that conventional medications are bad and supplements are good, you have to realize that they all pretty much come from the same source. So they all have the same origins in many regards. So now, with that in mind, just because something is so quote unquote natural, does that make it more safe or more even efficacious for that matter? Not really. Something that I always throw out there is that, well, hell, poison mushrooms and rattlesnakes are natural, but you got to be able to treat them
Right.
properly,
Right.
and in order to, so, but again, the vast majority of dietary supplements that are on the market are quite safe. Again, their efficacy sometimes can be questioned. Depends upon the source of the dietary supplement, and I hope we can get into that. We can talk about what to look for and what not to look for. But I have heard this many times from most of the times consumers that, oh, they're natural and they're safe and they're not, and they're much more safe than conventional medications, which in some regards is true, because when you talk about conventional medication, talking usually about one particular active pharmaceutical ingredient, and it's fairly concentrated, and so we understand. But what we do, the interesting thing about, or the most valuable thing about conventional medications is that they've gone through the ringer for the most part with regards to the research behind their safety and efficacy. So before a conventional medication comes on the market, it's supposed to have gone through a rigorous preclinical studies. Now, I will say this, much unlike the conventional vaccines that are on the market now, that's a whole different animal. They kind of did an end run around the whole approach to drug regulations, and we can get in. I'm not going to get into that right now.
Yeah, I share your sentiment there too. But yeah, fast tracking drugs definitely occurs. I don't think people really realize just how common that can be. However, it seems to be more accepted now that some things that normally would take years to get on the market are now here under emergency use authorization. So
right, and sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's an absolute Pandora's box, and so it might look good on the front end, but then you never ever really know the safety profile of conventional medication until it gets out into the consuming public for a couple of years.
That's an important distinction for sure.
And that's when you really find out whether or not your drug is either efficacious or too
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that aside, unlike conventional medications, which apart from the vaccines, do have to undergo rigorous safety and efficacy tests prior to the market, dietary supplements don't have to do that. And so consumers have a tendency to think that, oh, well, they're on the shelves right next to my ibuprofen and my Tylenol. Then they must have gone through the same type of safety and efficacy studies, and that's not necessarily the case. And so we can talk about why but it's just the nature of the beast. Consumers that assume that they're regulated just like conventional medications, in many respects they are, in some respects they're not. And you also have a lot of healthcare professionals that just go, oh, they're not regulated at all. They're hard, and so no. So what's the truth? Well, the truth is they are regulated. They're regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, just like conventional medications. It's just that the regulations are not as rigorous as they are for conventional medications. And the reason for that is because of a legislative act that allowed these types of products to be on the market. And that's the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act that was enacted by Congress in 1994. And basically and it's often the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, the acronym is DSHEA or DSHEA, depending on what part of the country you're from. And what that did is it defined dietary supplements as being distinct from conventional medications. And so basically what a dietary supplement is, it's a litany of things. It's an herb, botanical metabolite, and there's several. It's basically it's not intended to treat, cure, mitigate, or prevent a disease. All right, so you can have it's a very broad and encompassing definition, and a lot of things can fall under the definition of a dietary supplement. You cannot, unless you have gone through all the rigorous clinical studies to make a claim. Really, if you look at any dietary supplement label, at the very bottom it'll say this statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, and it's not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, prevent, or mitigate any disease. And so the vast majority of dietary supplements that are on the market that are supplied by scrupulous manufacturers will adhere to that. But you get there's a lot of junk out there too. And that's where, and those problematic products that have put a stigma on the whole industry.
Yeah, that's one thing that I try to tell people is not all drugs are created equally, not all supplements are created equally either. And it really, if you don't know or seek out people who do know these things, it's very hard to determine what you should spend your money on. Because let's be honest, dietary supplements aren't covered under insurance. So it's oftentimes, I mean, for a 90-day supply of the dietary supplement, it's vastly more expensive than say a 90-day supply of a generic medication to say target some sort of disease state that one patient may have or not.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, but again, you do see quite a few patients get really worked up when insurance doesn't cover a medication or their deductible isn't met or a copay is higher than they expect. But that $45 supplement sitting on the shelf, they don't think twice about it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of a weird
Yeah.
phenomenon that you have two of these
Yeah.
things
It
playing
is.
on and on. But
It is.
you've answered like 4 or 5 other questions I had. I was going to ask you about the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, what all that meant.
Yeah. Next year is going to be the 30th anniversary of the enactment of the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. So, uh, and there, there's some movement afoot that, there may be some amendments to that.
Hmm.
I'm not sure if that's going to come to fruition or not, but, it allowed dietary supplements to come on the market, and most of your scrupulous manufacturers, they put out good products,
Sure.
but there's a lot of junk out there
Hmm.
too. And it's up to pharmacists and people like not only, of course, you're a pharmacist as well, but you're also, you bring a lot more to the table because you also understand nutrition very
Hmm.
well. Not a lot of pharmacists understand that. And, so being able to wade through all the minefield, that is a minefield of dietary. And so it's not a lot of, I'm actually glad that your customers have access,
Right.
because you kind of get it, but a vast majority of pharmacists out there, I have no idea when it comes to dietary supplements, whether or not they're safe, efficacious, how they interact, so on and so forth, which brands to buy,
Right.
which brands to stock on your shelves,
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we'll get into that because at kind of the end, I don't want to. I like to have real life applications for people, so I don't want
Sure.
to just say things and then go, "Well, they didn't tell me what brands were good or what to look for."
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, we'll talk about
we'll
that.
get into that and kind of that towards the end of the episode. But I really want so
Sure.
before we get into we could me and you could talk all night long. I mean that we do that
Yeah, of
quite
course.
frequently about these topics because we
Yeah.
get it, but
Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Countdown to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Ah, feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now, only at BJ's.
I want to know kind of what got you interested not only in pharmacy in general, but in your PhD path, but like why supplements? Why not, why not get a PhD in, cell biology or something more obscure? Like
Yeah.
what got you down this path? I never really actually asked you this question before, so I'm kind of interested to hear the story behind that.
Yeah. So, as far as going into the getting interested in pharmacy, I major at Tennessee Technological University. And then, as part of our organic chemistry course, we had to write a term paper,
Mhm.
and they would assign us the class of compounds that they wanted us to write a term paper on. And the term paper was oxazolidine diones. And that doesn't mean a damn thing to anybody listening to this podcast, but what we do know is that they were designed. They were molecules designed. They have a variety of applications, but one of them was anti-seizure medications.
Mhm.
And so it just struck me as a chemie major taking organic chemistry that you could design a molecule to elicit a specific pharmacological action. And so to me, that just fascinated
Mhm.
the heck out of me. And so I dropped my chemie major and switched to pharmacy, pre-pharmacy. And so then when I got to pharmacy school, I really started working in the lab who would ultimately be my mentor, and that's Dr. Bice. And Dice was and he had been trained by some of the world's experts in pharmacokinetics. And so I kind of got interested in pharmacokinetics. Well, what's pharmacokinetics? Well,
Mhm.
basically, layman's is it's what the body does to the drug and not what the drug does to the body. And basically, we're talking about how drugs are absorbed, how they're distributed in the body, how they're metabolized, and how they're excreted. And so it's the pharmacokinetics is behind, why you take a certain amount of a drug
Mhm.
ever so often, so why do 250 milligrams twice a day or once a day? All that's dependent on the pharmacokinetics of the drug. So anyway, so So I was a pharmacokineticist I was a pharmaceutical scientist by training. So I was also trained in
Hmm.
formulations and, did a lot of physical pharmacy, physical chemistry and how that comes into play, but, also drug metabolism and pharmacokinetics. And so the nice thing about one, being a pharmacist and two, having a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences is that it gives you a very broad
Hmm.
um, area of expertise and a whole host of things
Right.
that will come into play down the road. And so, dietary supplements weren't even on the radar when I was in graduate school. But not long after I graduated and started working in the College of Pharmacy and of course, the reason I went into academia instead of industry is a different story, but we don't have time for that. But nevertheless, I ended up deciding to go take an academic position in the College of Pharmacy at the University of Arkansas. And then about 4 years into that. So my area of expertise actually in liver transplantation,
Hmm.
and not only the immunology associated with it, but also how liver transplants and how preserving organs would affect the pharmacomedications in someone who just got a new liver or a new kidney, And so there's a field called reperfusion injury that has a tremendous impact on how your liver functions initially going forward. So anyway, so I was a transplantation immunologist slash reperfusion injury pharmacokinetic. Yeah, it's kind of a very narrow niche, but any but to be a pharmacokineticist, one of the things you have to understand is you have to be able to analyze concentrations of drugs in biological fluids, primarily in blood or plasma
Hmm.
and urine. So you also have to be an analytical chemist. So I was very well versed in that. Anyway, long story short, I was running a lab at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, and one of the other departments, the Department of Pharmacy Administration, Dr. Stephanie Gardner. This was about 1996.
So you had
Two
me as
years
a
after.
2-year-old at home while you were starting on
Yeah,
all this stuff.
exactly. You were two. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so this is like 1996, 97. I think it's closer to 96. A couple of years after the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act had been passed by Congress. And there was a product that was getting a lot of publicity, both good and bad, in the media, and it was a product called Herbal Ecstasy.
What a
And so,
name.
oh
That would
yeah,
have
Herbal
gotten me.
Ecstasy.
Yeah, you don't need anything named herbal ecstasy. I'm like, nah, man, I'm not having anything to
So
do with that.
so you know what ecstasy is.
Yeah,
Ecstasy
yeah.
is basically methylene dioxymethamphetamine. So
MDMA, yeah.
but this is a play on that. So this is the herbal version
Mm.
of MDMA, so to speak. Anyway, so there was some safety concerns associated with it, and so she had a little foil of herbal ecstasy, and she said, "Can you analyze and tell me how much ephedrine alkaloids are?" So let me back up just a second. If herbal ecstasy was one of the ephedra-containing dietary supplements back in the
Hmm.
day, and so
Yeah, people my age don't
ephedra.
know what ephedra is.
Yeah, so ephedra it's a plant that's indigenous primarily to Middle Eastern countries, China,
Hmm.
that part of the world, and it's a source of ephedrine alkaloids. And so, well, what does that mean? Well, you may have heard of the drug Sudafed or
Hmm.
pseudoephedrine,
Hmm.
and so they're indirect acting sympathomimetic amines. Well, what does that mean?
Hmm.
Well, they do a lot of things, but Sudafed is typically was available and still available as a nasal decongestant,
Hmm.
but it also has some cardiovascular
Hmm.
stimulatory effects and a whole host of other things. But so when the Shea came out in 1994, there was a whole host of products marketed, um, and they were called ephedra-containing dietary supplements. And again, ephedra is it's a plant source containing
Hmm.
alkaloids. But they also, at the time, they also contain, almost all of them also contain sources of caffeine.
Mm.
And then also, a lot of them would contain synthetic sources of caffeine. And so synthetic caffeine sources like green tea,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
guarana, and yerba mate, and goodness gracious, there's a handful, Yopon holly, a few
Hmm.
others.
Hmm.
These products on the market, and they were being marketed as aids or exercise performance enhancers or energy boosters,
Sure.
those kinds of things.
So,
And so you had not a lot of, you had just regular folks, moms taking them to lose weight. You
Sure.
had athletes taking them to, boost their exercise performance, those kinds of things. Unfortunately, you started getting people that are having heart attacks, strokes, seizures, and psychotic events. Like, oh my God, what's going on here? So that's kind of so in the in the mid 1990s, ephedra supplements were kind of the problem child. What's going on? What do we know these things? Why are, these shouldn't be causing all these issues. And so she brought this herbal ecstasy to my lab and says, "Can you tell me how much ephedrine alkaloids is in there?" I said, "Well, we can certainly develop an assay and find out." So we developed an assay. You have to validate your assay too to make sure that it works properly. And so in the process of validating the assay for ephedrine alkaloids, we ran out of the herbal ecstasy. And so we were analyzing it using performance liquid chromatography. And so when you analyze a natural product with high performance chromatography, you get a bunch of different peaks.
Yeah.
And the peaks oftentimes, these peaks, and I say peak, it's
No, peaks
basically
is a good term. I mean, that's what in organic
so,
chemistry
if you're
we did
familiar with
HPLC.
chromatography,
Yep.
but each individual formulation will give you kind of like a signature
Sure.
of material that's in there. So we were analyzing the herbal ecstasy. We ran out of it. We had its signature. We knew how much ephedrine was in this one particular lot. We knew how much pseudoephedrine, methylephedrine, nor pseudoephedrine. There's a bunch of different ephedrine alkaloids in there, and that will give you a signature, so to speak. That's the best way to describe it. And so we ran out of this one particular lot. So she brings me another little package, but it's a different lot. And so we're analyzing it, and it's completely unlike the initial lot. So as a pharmacist,
You're like, what happened?
all your lot numbers of your drugs they should actually always be the exact same
yeah.
every time. Every lot number should be the same, or should look the same, should have the same quantity of the ingredient. This was completely unlike the first one. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, I'd have thought
So
if I were you, I'd have been sitting there going, okay, maybe this isn't herbal ecstasy. It looks completely different. Like, what the hell is
Exactly.
this? Because you
Exactly.
would think it would be somewhat similar, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, it had ephedrine alkaloids, no doubt, but they were the quantities of ephedrine and the quantities of pseudoephedrine. They were all different.
Yeah.
It's just completely unlike the first lot. And so I was just stunned, because as a pharmacist, you're not supposed to have lot to lot variations. I mean, yeah, you may have a little bit, maybe a 1%, but not 100%.
no, that's you're well past recall territory at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we got some more herbal ecstasy and we're analyzing, and hell, every lot was different.
Wow.
So then we started looking at not only herbal ecstasy, but just a whole host of ephedra-containing supplements that were on the market. And they were all over the map too. And so we published this paper in the American Journal of Health Systems Pharmacy. And I'm trying to remember what the title was, Content versus Label Claim. And then it had a little subtitle about ephedra-containing alkaloids and supplements and stuff. And so we found that the vast majority of ephedrine products, regardless of what their label may have claimed, oftentimes what was in the product was much unlike what was on the label claim. And so this was for some pretty very popular supplements. And so we published this paper, and you talk about stirring up the ale. Oh my God.
I remember
So
getting, did we get
Tabalife.
I hate to interrupt. Did we get voicemails and threats at home?
Oh yeah. So once we published this paper, and then, basically we basically poked a big sharp stick in the eye of the dietary
You poked the
supplement
bear
industry.
for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And they're like, oh my God, the cat's out of the bag, so to speak. And so I remember one afternoon, of course, this started a lot of rumors from the well, there was put it this way, there was actually a lobbying group for ephedra supplement companies called the Ephedra Education Council. They had a bunch of high-priced lawyers that started making all these claims about me, just making up stuff about me. Well, later on, I always referred to the Ephedra Education Council as the Ephedra Indoctrination, which is basically what it is. They were just trying to blow smoke about these things.
Sure.
And so, anyway, so we published that paper. It gets, it made quite a bit of, we got a lot of media hits on it. In fact, we had Dateline NBC came to the
I
lab.
remember.
I mean, I can't tell you how many camera crews came into my lab from 1996 until about 2000.
Mm-hmm.
It was just crazy. I mean, we were on ESPN, we were on Dateline NBC, Nightline, Good Morning America. I mean, it was just crazy there for a while. And so the reason for this, once word got out that these products didn't always match up to what their label claimed, you had a lot. Now they're looking for people to basically provide expert testimony for some of these wrongful death cases that were going to litigation. And so one of the very first case to go to trial was for a young lady, I think she was in her mid to late 20s in Alaska, who had taken a product and then went to play, sand volleyball, and she had a stroke. I'm like, well, that's
not common in 28-year-old healthy people. Yeah.
Yeah. She was one of a whole host of people that were having these heart attacks, strokes, seizures, and psychotic events. And so she just happened to be the very first one to go to they went to trial. So they reached out to me and said, would you be an expert witness? And so I didn't know anybody. Yeah, I'll do that. Sure. No problem. Woo. So it was me, and I was on the plaintiff side, and the defense was for dietary supplement companies. And so they had a ton of money that they could buy, basically hire some of the biggest names in either cardiovascular pharmacology or neurology or whatever. And so, this first case that went to trial in Alaska, it was me, this young kid from Arkansas, versus some of the highly cited cardiovascular pharmacologists and urologists in the world. But what was really funny, and I give the plaintiff's attorney all the credit for this, is that at one point during the examination of expert witnesses on the stand, this lady that was from Stanford University, a cardiovascular pharmacologist, she had her virtues about she started talking over the head of the jurors. She's talking molecular pharmacology and this and that, and these are just people off the streets, and they're looking at her
just people got pulled into jury duty.
What the hell is she saying?
Yeah.
And so anyway, the plaintiff's attorney realized that the juror has no idea what she's saying. Now, granted, she knew her pharmacology. But one of the first questions he asked her when he on cross-examination was, Dr. So-and-so, have you ever done any research or published anything on ephedrine alkaloids? Have you ever published anything on ephedrine alkaloid safety? And just a whole litany of questions. He finally got down to, well, have you ever done any research or published anything on ephedra-containing dietary supplements? No. And he goes down and every answer to his question was no, to the point to where she got so angry at him, she started yelling at him.
On the stand, wow.
The judge asked her, Dr. So-and-so, you need to come. And then she started yelling at the judge.
That's hilarious. That's so crazy.
This is crazy.
Oh, man.
So then.
Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Countdown to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now only at BJ's.
so then,
How do you
so
seriously?
then
How
they
do you
got
go
me
to
on this.
trial for that and not expect
Oh
those
yeah, and
questions to
so
come?
get me on, and I'm not, I get on the stand, and so okay, he asked me the same questions he asked
Yeah,
her,
yeah,
and
yeah.
my questions were yes, 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 yes. And so at the end, he says, "So, Dr. Gurley, would it be correct to say that you're probably one of the world's foremost experts on ephedra-containing dietary supplements?" And I said, "Well, I've never thought about it like that, but I guess you'd have to say yes." And then he asked me some questions about, what's going. And so instead of talking pharmacology over the jurors' heads, I just started giving them everyday analogies as to why this individual's stroke may have been related to her taking this particular this ephedra-containing dietary supplement. And and I could just tell right away that the jurors got it.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
were looking like, oh, okay. And they just kind of see this. Oh, that's what yeah. And so long story short, we win the case.
Mhm.
And the case was for the plaintiffs for like $8 million,
Mhm.
which at the time
It's a
was a
lot of
lot of
money
money.
in '96. Yeah.
Yeah, in 1990, this is in 2000. I think
Okay.
the first case only go to trial was in 2000. And then after that, man, the floodgates opened up, and
Mhm.
so I was an expert witness for a lot of cases that not all of them went to trial. A lot of them got settled out, a lot of them got settled, but the ones that did go to trial, I mean, we won every one, so knock on wood, I never lost a case with regards to those products. And we were up against some pretty heavy hitters. I mean, some of the top selling ephedra-containing supplements in the companies in the nation, Metabolize, Rip
Xenadrin, yeah,
Fuel,
Rip Fuel. I remember
let's
Stacker.
see.
Was Stacker one of them?
Yeah, all we did, yeah, yeah. Stacker, Hydroxycut,
That's a big one.
all of those guys,
Yeah.
and so, but what was really interesting to me, and I knew this from experience in pharmacy school. So this was, when I was in pharmacy school, there was a group of products that were marketed, and they were based for lack of a better term, colloquially, they were termed amphetamine look. And so amphetamine at the time was in a black capsule, and so these amphetamine lookalikes were also in a black capsule,
Mm.
but they didn't contain amphetamine. They contained ephedrine, phenylpropanolamine,
Mm.
which is basically
Mhm.
which is an analog of ephedrine,
Mhm.
and a caffeine. And so they were marketed. So what kind of their product? Individual ingredient by itself is pretty innocuous.
Yeah.
But when you throw them all together,
Yeah.
oh, it can get ugly fast.
Yeah.
And so from a cardiovascular and a cerebrovascular context. So um and so I remember in pharmacy school when these things are popular, and I took one. I had to study for some exams. So I'll pop one of these. We called them black mollies. I said I'll pop one of these things, and I'll and my God, oh my, your Lord, I was awake for all night.
Mhm.
You're just so buzzed. You're you couldn't sleep. I kind of got what I maybe remember. I don't know. Anyway, I could study, not a problem. I was taking all this in. I didn't,
You remember anything?
I was just buzzed,
Yeah.
big time,
Yeah.
and not only were you hyped up studying, but, afterwards you wanted to, you know, uh, wash the car and paint the house and, mow the neighbor's yard. No, I mean, you're just so wired up with this stuff. I'm like, my God. So after I took my exam the following day, I can't recall how I did on it, but I can't remember a damn thing I studied after that. So you just,
Yeah. I want to.
you couldn't retain anything.
Yeah.
You could focus on it at the time, but then afterwards you kind of had this memory dump.
Yeah. That's
So I had
that's a
I had personal experience with these products that were synthetic combinations of ephedrine, phenylpropanolamine, and caffeine, which is the same thing that was in these ephedra-containing diet supplements, except that the source all natural and not synthetic.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, from a pharmacological perspective, the drug molecule doesn't know the way your receptors in your body
Yeah, they don't
respond to
know.
a molecule.
They don't know the
They don't know
difference.
whether it's synthetic or whether it's natural. I mean,
Correct.
the molecule is a molecule, So anyway, so that so I brought all that out, not only in various depositions, but also in trial. And so what happened to the amphetamine looks? Well, because of the heart stroke, seizures, and psychotic events that had occurred during the mid '80s to the early '90s, the FDA pulled that stuff off the market. He said, no, you cannot market these things unless you can prove to the FDA that they're safe and effective. And that can never be done.
Yeah.
And so they went away. But then when the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act came
They
out,
came right back.
boom,
They came
you had
right back.
all these
Yeah.
natural, basically they were just natural
Versions of the
alternatives
same
to
thing.
methamphetamine lookalikes.
Yeah. That's an
that's what
that's an important point you make, because ADHD, attention deficit disorder, are something that's very familiar with pharmacists right now. There's plenty of medications out there. We pretty much, the dosages haven't really changed. They're pretty easy to manage if you do it correctly. But cardiovascular side effects, appetite suppression. You were one of the first people, when I was prescribed these things, were like, look, we really need to be tracking your growth, because it could stunt your growth a little bit. That's starting to come out pretty heavily now.
Yeah.
We know these things have side effects, just like every drug does. But again, it's very scary to think that just right down the street, anybody could technically make something natural version of it that might be cheaper or easier to get, because there's a very big shortage of those amphetamine type medications right now.
Right.
And those aren't easy meds you want to be off of for long periods of time if you've been on them for a while. And people might reach for those natural products thinking, oh, you know what, this will hold me over till the drug supply thing comes back. They're natural, so it won't hurt me. And then you never know. Like you said, the variation can be all over the place.
Yeah.
So that's a spooky thing for sure.
So with that, once that first case was found for the plaintiffs, and then like I said, the floodgates opened up. So there were a whole host of cases that went to. Long story short, the FDA finally took the ephedra-containing products off the market. Okay, so Metabolife, Hydroxycut, RFA was the one that was on the market at the time. All that stuff went away. And so then you came out with these ephedra-free supplements. So I mean, for example, a classic example was during the day when Metabolife was at its heyday in like 2000, 2001. It had over $1 billion in sales that year.
Wow.
It outsold Prozac that year.
Wow.
And then a lot of bad publicity started coming out, and their sales just started to plummet. So what do they? Well, okay, we'll take the ephedra out, and then we'll add a whole bunch of other non-ephedra, still sympathomimetic amines, and throw some more caffeine in there, and so now they're ephedra free. So okay, we're good, we're all good.
Yep.
Well, so I just said, well, ephedra, okay, so here, I'm a curious guy. I'm interested in these things. I know a lot about the pharmacology of all the ingredients that are in a lot of these ephedra-free supplements that are on the market now. And so we did one, and my understanding, the only clinical pharmacology study on ephedra-free containing dietary supplements. And hell, they were just as problematic as ephedra-containing stuff, because if you throw natural sympathomimetic amine compounds with a bunch of caffeine in it, whether or not there's any ephedra in it or not, I mean, it's still going to act the same. And so we saw the same thing. A lot of alterations, significant alterations in electrocardiograms, significant increases in blood pressure, heart rate, so on and so forth. So even though they're ephedra free, that doesn't necessarily mean they're trouble free.
Right.
And that's what you still have on the market now. But
now they're in the form of pre-workout powders.
Oh yeah. And so,
oh man, yeah, those are nasty.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's bad. Just doing a heavy workout with weights alone will crank your blood pressure up, especially the pressure in your cerebral vasculature. And then you throw in some compounds like a whole lot of caffeine and a whole lot of other sympathomimetic amines. Man, it'll make your blood. You wonder why people have had strokes with those types of products. What's really interesting, back in the day, ephedrine and caffeine are one of the few drug combinations that markedly increase not only markedly cause vasodilation in the markedly the pressure in vasculature. So it's one of the few drug combinations that do that. And you wonder why it's not. Once you understand that, it's not beyond the realm of possibility where you would see some of it. And of course, everybody has their own different sensitivities. And the whole genetic aspect of things, some people are going to be much more sensitive to these things than others. And so, and that oftentimes that was the case. So you can have some genetic polymorphisms and either metabolizing enzymes or receptors or so on and so forth. So some individuals are just going to be much more susceptible to these things than others. So, so again, although the ephedra supplements were taken off the market in 2004, the ephedra-free products, most of which are pre-workout supplements. I mean, there's some absolutely crazy formulations that are on the market now. They're just not getting a lot of publicity because there's bigger things for the media to jump on now.
Sure. Yeah, there's
So
still a
these are under the radar screen, so to speak. But I mean, if you get hurt by one, you're still hurt by it.
sure. Yeah, Dr. Dunn in pharmacy school always said this, and this has always stayed in the back of my mind, is it's not rare if it happens to you.
Right.
So, and that not only, he was using it in the context of prescription medication side effects, but I mean,
Right.
supplements are the same way. And it's funny you mentioned pre-workout because there's still and if you tweak your social media well enough, you can find these posts about pre-workouts and they're all hilarious because every single one of them is the same. They all miss Jack 3D, the original one. There's this forum
Yeah.
of guys out there that think that was the best thing since sliced bread. And like, they're so mad that it's not available anymore.
Yeah.
But none of them know why
Yeah.
that was pulled.
Yeah, we're one of the few groups that have actually done some animal studies with not only Jack 3D, but also one of the analogs of Jack. They're made by the same company, Oxy Elite Pro. And that's rot your liver out, but it'll wreak havoc on your blood pressure and stuff. So yeah, I mean, Jack 3D, I mean, if you just look at all of the adverse event reports that were submitted to the FDA and to poison control centers across the country for all of our active service people that were taking Jack 3D and Oxy Elite Pro as to help them on their to help them pass their
Fitness screenings.
yeah, exactly. And and a lot of these guys are having strokes and heart attacks and this and that. But when you actually look at what's in the products, it makes perfect sense. And so it was finally one of the Oxy Elite Pro cases went to trial. Well, it didn't go to trial, but it went to the Department of Justice. They asked us to do some of the research on it, and yeah, it's very problematic because the problem with Oxy Elite Pro when it came out was there are a lot of serious liver injuries associated with it, and we could pretty much emulate that in some animals, and so come to find out that in fact, hardly any of the components in Oxy Pro were of natural origin.
Yeah.
Almost all of them were synthetic. And that synthetic combination of ingredients had never been administered to humans before.
Oh my God.
Nevertheless, an animal.
Man.
And so basically the consuming public were their guinea pigs for these products. And so that's a problem. And that's still a case for a lot of these pre-workout supplements. Now, the vast majority of dietary supplements that don't contain a lot of these crazy stimulants are very safe.
Yeah.
And they have have excellent safety profiles. And so it just depends upon, if you mix and match all kinds of interesting ingredients that have never been mixed and matched before.
Yeah, you're just opening the door for bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you get some odd pharmacological responses.
Sure.
Hell, what do you expect?
Yeah, right.
I would always call it I kind of liken them in many instances, not all, but in many instances, a lot of these crazy formulations as a pharmacological Pandora's box.
Yeah. You open it, you can't close it, and it's too late if it does.
Yeah, it's ugly.
And then just like with anytime lawyers are involved, it's like once one case gets attention, it's just like there's 80 other ones waiting.
Oh yeah.
And it's just
it was wild there for a while, so I would get death threats.
I remember.
This is back when you still had phones in the house that we didn't have cell phones, and I'm like, and all I did was piss me off, so we'd do another study and we'd poke another stick in their eye, and the more they would threaten me, the more research we would do. And it just got ugly. At the end of the day, we ended up winning out, because at that point, the media was on our side because, anyway, and I could go on and tell horror stories, but
that's not
after that. Yeah. So I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I was just going to say I don't want to, there's tons of horror stories out there. And I think people aren't aware of it. So I'm glad that there's people out there actually doing the research that
Oh yeah.
proves that, because, then again, something obscure like that. Now I'm going to go off on a slight tangent now that we brought research into it that I don't think a lot of people understand. So as a lot of people are familiar with human clinical trial research for drugs or for nutrition, okay, because it's kind of easy to do, and there's really not a lot of downside, so to speak, with nutrition protocols in particular, because it's fairly easy to do. Now,
Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Countdown to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Ah, feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now, only at BJ's.
but everyone seems to, there's this narrative that is, unfortunately, in my opinion, taking over a little too much. And it's this, I see people, especially on social media, and I've alluded to it in in one of the first episodes of the show, is there's a lot of appeals to conspiracy. It's real easy for people to gravitate towards, oh, there's these unknown individuals behind this curtain pulling the strings, and they want to make us sick and stuff. And in reality, their biggest claims when you try to cite a paper like, hey, where's this for that claim? It's, oh, well, who funded it? Who funded the study?
Yeah.
So in relation to dietary supplements, had over 200 publications. So exactly what it takes to get a study published and accepted.
Right.
So can you kind of,
Right.
for bare bones, just so people kind of understand the whole process, what does it take for Dr. Gurley to do research on a supplement, get funding for it, and then get it published? Can you kind of walk us through a timeline of that, just so people are aware?
Yeah, I can. But before we do that,
Yeah.
I need to take a little quick break.
So I have a few, based off the funding question, on how a study like this gets conducted. What's the funding process like? How's the approval thing? Just kind of walk us through what all it takes. Because I know when it's time for you to do a grant or try to get that published, it's not a fun time for you. So I know
No.
there's a lot to it that I just don't think people are aware of it, because there's a lot of misconceptions that there's these big industries out there funding all these studies, and they're manipulating the studies, and it kind of gives people an out to just kind of dismiss the evidence without having to actually read it or interpret it.
Ye- Yes, yes and no. So because if you look at the Education Act, a lot of these companies, they're not obligated
Sure.
to do clinical research studies. Um, they're just not. I mean, that's to me, that's always been kind of one of the shortcomings of this, is that it's not up to the dietary supplement companies to prove
Mhm.
that their product is safe or efficacious. They don't have to do the human clinical trials that conventional medications have to go through. So that approval process is much different than the approval process for conventional medications. And the reasons for that is because most of these dietary supplements have a very long track record of safety.
Mhm.
Stuff like, I don't know, let's say a wheat germ,
Yeah.
okay, or vitamin
You
E,
name it. Yeah.
or echinacea. I mean, that stuff people have been consuming many of these plants for millennia, and they're not recognized as being problematic. And so, but when you start putting that the human populations have never consumed before,
Yeah.
it's one thing to consume one particular plant. There's a diet. When we eat, we might eat some green beans and some corn and some Brussels sprouts. Okay, but you kind of get used to it. We know that those are harmless. But when you start throwing in other interesting botanicals, that have some interesting pharmacology. It's one thing to consume them by themselves. When you put them all together, hard to say what the pharmacology is going to be like. And what I can't emphasize enough is that with dietary supplements, it's not just a plant that's ground up in a powder and put into a capsule. It's that the plant is dried, ground up, and then it's extracted.
Mm-hmm.
It's extracted with either hot aqueous solutions or ethanolic solutions, or sometimes other organic solvents to concentrate all these unique phytochemicals or plant-derived chemicals. And so you're being exposed to much higher concentrations of these ingredients than if you just consume the plant in its natural state.
Mm-hmm.
And so, now granted, a lot of these phytochemical combinations are, even if you concentrate them to, orders of magnitude more than you would be in a plant, they're not harmful.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not always the case.
Yeah.
And so when you start mixing and matching different botanical extracts, especially in these multi-ingredient pre-workout supplements, you oftentimes get some just absolute crazy stuff that's going to, and they don't do any research on.
Yeah, you don't know what.
So then you have people like myself that come along and go, well, okay, let's just see what this stuff actually does. And sometimes it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just crazy. I mean, so a classic example, and I kind of go back to the Ephedra thing. When, when we first started getting death threats and stuff, and I said, all right, well, by God, bring it on. Here we go. And so we did a mouse study. Okay. Just a little toxicology study. And we took several of the top selling Ephedra-containing supplements, all of which, and then we took one just Ephedra supplement by itself. It had nothing else in it, just Ephedra,
Mm-hmm.
just an Ephedra extract with just Ephedra and alkaloids. And so we took one capsule of each product, extracted it in water, and then administered a very small, like 100 microliters, I forget the exact volume, but it's a very small volume to a mouse. And so it just so happened that the largest dose per milligram per kilogram in the mice of the ephedra and alkaloids came from just the plain ephedra product, nothing else. They had the highest concentrations of milligram per kilogram of ephedra and alkaloids.
Mm-hmm.
All those animals survived the study. No problems whatsoever. All the other mice that got the individual products like Metabolife
Mm-hmm.
or there was one, a couple of others. They all, I mean, most of them died within 72 hours.
Well,
one product killed all of them in 24 hours.
Good Lord.
And so they all had, and their ephedra and alkaloid doses were,
less.
Much less
Wow.
than just the ephedra, but they all had caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
They all had other, stimulants in there. And so it just goes to show you that ephedra by itself is not problematic, but when you throw it in the mix with other ingredients, it can become very problematic. So you have a lot of additive, sometimes even synergistic
Sure.
effects from all these things together. So it just goes to show you that one product by itself, usually not a problem. You start mixing and matching things and you've never, ever, and human beings have never consumed this combination before. And don't be surprised if some people don't react very well.
Yeah.
So that's just common sense. That you don't take it doesn't take a PhD in pharmaceutical science to figure that out.
No. Mm-mm.
So anyway, that goes back to that. So in my regard, the more complex a formulation is, especially if it has a lot of sympathomimetic amines in it, the more problematic it's going to be. And so you have a lot of those products in the pre-workout
Sure.
supplements today.
Yeah, I always
So-
tell people to if you look at a supplement and if you just the best way to distinguish one product from the other as far as safety goes is just if you just see a lot of ingredients hidden under a proprietary blend on a label, probably best just avoid that one if you don't know what it is. But it's
the whole
because you have
proprietary
no
blend.
idea the individual concentrations in that proprietary blend, and you can kind of get away with adding stuff and not listing it too. So that's probably, I think, the easiest
Exactly.
thing that people can
and the
do.
proprietary blends are, they're proprietary, but they've not done any research
Sure.
on most of these proprietary blends. It just happens to be a combination that nobody else has combined.
Yeah.
So they call it proprietary.
Sure.
Now, every now, again, not all of them are that way, but if you we can do a whole podcast just on exercise performance enhancement supplements.
Yeah,
But
we'll probably get into that at some point for sure.
yeah, but to kind of shift gears, after um, at the same time, simultaneous with all of our Ephedra research, as someone who's fairly well versed in drug interactions, the first thing you think about is, well, I wonder what kind of interactions can these dietary supplements have with conventional medication? So we were one of the very first groups to actually systematically evaluate some of the very popular supplements and their ability to modulate human drug metabolism. And it just so happens that one of the very first products we looked at was St. John's wort.
Mm-hmm.
And St. John's wort by itself it's very innocuous, not a problem. It's actually from a lot of people take St. John's wort for its antidepressive effects,
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look at some of the well-designed clinical studies done in Europe, um, a high-quality St. John's wort product is as good as than most tricyclic
Mm-hmm.
antidepressants and most, if not all, of the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Yeah.
And the safety profile is much less. So you don't get a lot of crazy side effects
Sure.
with
Like you would tricyclic antidepressants and
tricyclics.
stuff. Yeah.
Tricyclics are nothing but it's a side effect in a bottle. Is all tricyclics.
Pretty, they're not very, I mean, they're not commonly prescribed much anymore. I mean,
No,
even from the time I
exactly.
started.
They,
Yeah.
they've kind of gone the way of the dinosaurs, and then then the whole SSRI thing has kind of been blown up recently
Sure.
too. So
Mhm.
they may have some. It's questionable.
Sure.
Well, that's something for a whole nother story. But St. John's wort, the problem with a lot of SSRIs is that it basically diminishes a lot of people's libido.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you're
That's a
not,
common counseling point that I talk to
that's
patients
very
about there.
common
Yeah,
with
for sure.
most with most SSRIs. Not the case with St. John's wort.
Mhm.
So, but the mechanism, but what we found is that we were doing one of the very first studies, and when we were looking at the data, we found that when you gave St. John's wort the first study we did it for 30 days. We had individuals on St. John's wort for 30 days, and we looked at their drug metabolizing enzyme activity before and after the
Mhm.
30-day course. And some of the very important drug metabolizing enzymes at the end of that 30 days, we saw the activity increase by over 100%.
Mm.
I'm like, whoa, that was just crazy. I'm like, what? Almost like, man, something's wrong here. I've
Yeah,
never
something must
seen
be off.
anything.
Yeah. That would have been my initial
Exactly.
reaction too.
There must be something. This can't be right. Well, so about 2 weeks after I crunched the numbers on that very first clinical that involved St. John's wort, I got a call from, and in fact, a study physician
Mhm.
who was he was my study physician in all of our clinical studies with herbal supplements. He was also a transplant surgeon.
Mhm.
He calls me up one afternoon and he says, "Hey, Gurley, you work with that herbal crap. I got a question for you." And he actually used a harsher expletive than crap, but it had this letters in it, so you know what that means. And he said, "Hey, you think St. John's wort can interfere with cyclosporin?" And so for people on the podcast don't know what cyclosporin is an immunosuppressive drug that revolutionized solid organ transplantation. That drug allowed heart, liver, kidney transplants to be done on a regular basis and people to survive for years, decades.
Mhm.
But the problem with cyclosporin, it has what we call a narrow therapeutic window. If the concentrations in your blood are too low, your body may reject your organ.
Mhm.
But if the concentrations are too high, you can cause some kidney damage.
Yep.
So
You're walking a fine line for
so
sure.
anyway, yeah. So my physician buddy calls me up, and I said, "So you've got transplant recipients on cyclosporin and St. John's wort?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, I bet the cyclosporin levels are really low, aren't they? And there was a long phone, and he goes, "How the hell did you know that?" And of course, cyclosporin is metabolized by the same enzymes that we saw that were just markedly increased in their
Mhm.
activity. So you would think that, okay, if St. John's wort is making the the drug metabolizing enzymes that are responsible for the metabolism of cyclosporin, if these guys are
Cranked up.
much
Yeah.
cranked up, induced, as we say, then you're going to metabolize the cyclosporin much more efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to have to give, so the regular doses of cyclosporin are not going to be effective. And so what there was 4 individuals that were in the clinic at the time that were having acute rejection.
Well,
and the only reason they could figure it out was because they were also taking St. John's wort. And that it's an interesting story as to how that came about. But nevertheless, that paper, we were the first ones to publish the clinical relevance of the St. John's wort. And now wort is one of the most potent inducers of human drug metabolizing enzymes ever discovered.
yeah.
There's a unique phytochemical in St. John's wort called hyperforin. And it's one of the most potent actors of human drug metabolizing ever discovered. It makes rifampin look sad. I'm not sure if you're familiar with rifampin.
Yeah.
Rifampin is a drug to treat tuberculosis, and it's notorious for inducing these same drug metabolizing enzymes. Well, the amount of rifampin necessary to induce these enzymes is order of magnitude greater than the amount of St. John's wort, or the hyperforin. So that got us off on all of that. And so we started looking into all kinds of herb drug interactions, and that's kind of where I kind of got back into good favor with the dietary supplement industry. So because a lot of us there was this concern that everything's going to act like St. John's wort. Well, no.
Right.
St. John's wort is probably one of maybe a handful of botanicals that really cause significant herb
What
drug
are some of the
interactions.
some of the other ones that you can be on the lookout? Because honestly, like there's really when people ask me all the time, hey, granted, I used to not get this question. I get this question quite often now. Hey, does this interact with other medications that I'm on? And I'd say 99% of the time you look at it and be like, nah, nothing to worry about. But there's a handful that I'm looking for.
So you're always looking for, of course, St. John's wort.
Sure.
Of course, now there are now that we know what's the problematic issue with St. John's wort, there are St. John's wort products that have very low hyperforin content.
Sure.
And they don't have
mess
an
with it.
issue, but you've really got to do your homework to know which products to take and which products not. They're St. John's wort. They're not.
Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Countdown to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now only at BJ's.
I will say this. The vast majority of dietary supplements on the market at the moment, and we've just literally just scratched the surface of their interaction potential.
Yeah.
But we do know that St. John's wort is a problem. Golden seal.
Yeah, that's another one I'm familiar with.
There's some unique compounds in golden seal that work just the opposite of St. John's wort. Instead of inducing metabolizing enzymes and making drugs less effective, they inhibit the enzyme activity and make a lot of other medications more toxic.
Yeah.
So golden seal, let's see, what are some of the, a black pepper extract.
That's in a lot of stuff, especially the curcumin products. And
and the reason it's there is because curcumin is extensively metabolized in the not only in the gut, but also in the liver. So very little of the parent curcumin gets to the systemic circulation. And the reason for that is because it's metabolized as it goes to the gut and the liver. It's called a first pass effect. So there's components in black pepper called piperine or piperamides. And the piperamides are potent inhibitors of a lot of these very important drug metabolizing enzymes. And so you throw black pepper extract into a formulation with something like curcumin, more curcumin
gets absorbed systemically. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not a problem. Curcumin by itself is innocuous, not a problem. But if you're taking it with some other medication that has a narrow therapeutic window and you're taking not only you're taking a drug with a narrow therapeutic window, but you're also taking it with a piperine-containing extract supplement, then it might make some medications more toxic.
Yeah, I mean,
So
my
you have to be
initial
careful with
thought would
those.
be like if you have someone on a medication, let's say, I mean, I don't see phenytoin very much for seizures or anything
No,
anymore.
not anymore.
Now, granted, you can have some people on that, but there are a few drugs out there, like certain digoxin, certain ones that are careful with the drug concentrations, and no one would think twice about taking curcumin or turmeric because it's, it gets advertised on TV all
Oh,
the
yeah.
time. If your
Yeah.
joints hurt and you feel like, blah, blah, blah. So I always try to recommend a phytosomal preparation of that just to kind of
Yeah.
avoid that.
Right.
Because I also see not only is there the drug interaction potential there, which I'm not super concerned really, but a lot of people complain about it, that they hate the taste of that stuff. Like they're like,
Yeah.
when I take those supplements and I have, if I get a little indigestion later, like I taste it, I hate it. And like they'll
Yeah.
sometimes even bring products back and go, I don't want anything that has that peppery crap in it. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I get why,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. And there's a reason why the golden seal and the piperine are the black pepper, because they're sources of phytochemicals that have a particular organic molecular structure that we recognize now as a problem.
mhm,
And there are a lot of plants, and plants make all kinds of these phytochemicals that have this particular structure. And the reason for that is because they're good they're good insecticides,
sure,
so to speak. So plants make these compounds to keep the bugs away, to keep the bugs from chewing on them and eating them up. But when we as humans ingest these compounds, they have some other pharmacological aspects, and they inhibit these drug metabolizing enzymes.
sure.
And so there's stuff like Shazandra
Mhm,
and let's see, Shazandra, golden seal, black pepper. Those are there's a handful of others. There are other, but the vast while the while there's always a risk
yeah,
for an herb drug interaction potential. It looks like the vast majority don't really pose a risk. And
sure.
there's a reason for that. It's because a lot of phytochemicals don't get
Absorbed.
absorbed very well.
Yeah,
So if they don't get absorbed, they're not going to be a problem.
yeah. A common example
So
that I've talked to our wellness department about a couple of times is a lot of people, now that ever since of the low fat diet craze kind of went out the window in the 90s and it kind of shifted. It was fat's the enemy. Now it was carbs. And then now it's seed oils, which I'm going to debunk here in a minute because there's just no claims. It's so ridiculous. But anyway, the low carb community and insulin resistance and all these buzzwords around blood sugar control are popular. So people come in and go, hey, what can I take to help with blood sugar control? They're like, I've heard about Akkermansia, which is just a probiotic that helps, you can control blood sugar responses in the gut to an extent,
Yeah.
which is fine, harmless.
yeah,
But the most common thing that people talk about is like berberine. They're like, I don't want to be on metformin, but
Yeah.
my doctor said berberine would probably be something pretty similar because it behaves pretty similarly.
Yeah.
And I have no problems telling people you're just going to waste your money because the way chemically that berberine is structured, it isn't going to get absorbed to any extent.
Yeah.
And even the is it dihydroberberine, the other preparation that's different? There's another one that I think is like a little bit more soluble. Or
yeah. I know amine is what we call a quaternary amine,
yeah,
which has a positive charge on it, which that alone makes it difficult to be absorbed. So it's not going to be now. It might have some on the gut microflora,
mm-hmm.
but exactly what that is,
Yeah, we don't know.
difficult to say.
Yeah,
Um, a very very small amount of berberine will. I'm not sure that that's enough to have. It might be enough to have some significant impact on blood sugar, that kind of stuff. The jury's still out on
sure.
that. We really don't know. And what amount of berberine are absorbed do get metabolized pretty extensively. They get glucuronidated.
Yeah, they just get
And so now it's possible that some of those glucuronides are active. The dogma is aren't active.
Yeah.
But we know that's not the case. classic example is with the morphine. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, morphine 6-glucuronide is extremely potent
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and it actually crosses the blood-brain barrier. So there's an example of a natural product, morphine from opium, whose glucuronide is active.
Yeah.
So it's possible that berberine glucuronides might be active. No one's really teased that out yet.
Sure.
But if you just now, so does it have some efficacy out there? Suggests that it does. And there is an interaction potential there, because it does have, it falls into that category of phytochemicals that have this. It's called a methylene dioxyphenyl functional group.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to know.
I know what it is because I've listened to you talk about it
you know
before.
what it is.
But yeah, no one.
But unless
no one's
you're an
familiar.
organic chemist, you're not going to make. But nevertheless, like I said, plants make a lot of these molecules that have that methylene dioxyphenyl functional group, and they're good. They're good insecticides as far as the plant's concerned. But when we ingest those, they can inhibit a lot of drug metabolizing enzymes.
Mhm.
Not all of them do, because it depends upon their physical chemistry, and that's a whole nother topic to get into at some point. But the vast majority, is there potential for herb drug interactions? Yes. How problematic is it? A handful right now.
Not really. Yeah.
Probably not that big of a deal as we might like. And if you look at, there are a lot of good resources for information regarding, but a lot of that is based on in vitro data.
Yeah.
And so if you give enough,
Just to kind of pause for a second, like, could you,
Yeah.
I haven't really gotten a chance to do a deep dive on study design, which I plan on doing, even though that podcast is going to be super boring. So we're just going to have to trudge through it. But can you explain to people the difference, but like what that means? Because you'll hear mouse studies, animal studies, human clinical trials, and then you'll hear this other study, like, or cell culture studies or in vitro. Can you explain kind of why that a scientist like yourself may pick that study design over, say, trying to do like a mouse study like you've done as well before?
Yeah. So you basically can throw all studies into two basic categories: in vitro or in vivo.
Mhm.
In vivo means in a live body, whether that body is a mouse or a rat or a human.
Mhm.
All right. And of course, rats metabolize things differently than humans do. So an animal study may show something. Does that mean does it mean that that's going to be the same effect in a human? Usually not. Sometimes it is, but not always. And so a lot of times what people will do, they look at what's called an in vitro study.
Mhm.
An in vitro study is basically, for lack of a better term, in glass, in a
Test tube, so to speak.
a test tube or in a dish.
Mhm.
So what does that mean? Well, that means typically you either have some cells, some individuals, like, for example, liver cells, hepatocytes, and you may expose the hepatocytes to different phytochemical concentrations and see whether or not the activity of those enzymes in those hepatocytes are affected. Sometimes you can just have verified enzyme in vitro study too. But invariably, if you add enough of anything, you'll get effect.
Sure.
Whether it'll be induce the enzyme or inhibit the enzyme or whatever. Okay. And a lot of times these concentrations that are necessary to elicit a response in an in vitro study are oftentimes orders of magnitude higher than you would ever see
in a human
if you
or mouse.
ingested that product in a human being. Because as human beings, our guts, our livers, they're protective mechanisms,
Right.
So they see all foreign compounds. We call them xenobiotics. Look, I'm not familiar with this. I'm going to do something to it so I can get rid of it. And so your gut has a lot of these drug metabolizing enzymes. Your liver has these drug metabolizing enzymes. And so when you ingest a foreign compound, a xenobiotic, or whether it's a phytochemical or a drug, your body reacts to it as, I don't recognize this. I'm gonna change it to make it.
Yeah, get it out of here. I don't want to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, from an in vitro's perspective, a lot of the times you can elicit a response in vitro, but that may not have any bearing whatsoever on an in vivo a clinical study.
Sure.
The same. We're always about the translational. Is the data results from an in vitro study translate to the clinical.
Correct. Yeah. And unfortunately, especially now, and this is common in nutrition research too, is that, people will say, oh, well, they'll, if they cite a study at all, which is the first big problem, most of them just put stuff out there and don't, do any due diligence to cite sources. But if they do, they may go find, or they may Google it real quick and go find a cell study. And so, oh, see, look at all these negative things in this cell study. It's bad. It causes cancer, or it does whatever. When in reality, you're sitting here going, it's a cell culture study. Like the reason you do a cell culture study is to see what might be going on. And then you conduct the animal study to see if that actually translates, like you've talked about.
Right.
So just because now, again, cell culture studies are super important, and sometimes that's all you can do. It might not be it might not be ethical to do that study in humans or mice, for that example. Because what people don't realize, and you're the head of the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, is people still have this kind of stigma that like animal research is cruel and all this evil stuff. And
they
don't realize what all it goes into it. So
necessary.
So can you put people's minds at ease real quick and kind of keep it brief on like what that institution's there to do, and why, why do we care about mice? My kind of, they're useful. They're easy to use in a study, but like, why do we care so much about, if it's ethical to do something for like mice or something? I'm just
it's ethical. It's ethical if you treat the animals humanely, right? And so, we could do a whole podcast on this, but the purpose for for all drug companies, before they put a molecule of some suspected drug into a human being, you have to see whether it's going to be safe. And so oftentimes what will happen is you'll use an animal model, a mouse or a rat. And mice and rats, they're pretty hardy. They're pretty hardy beings. It's pretty hard to mouse or a rat because they're used to eating, nasty stuff.
Right.
And they have really, really good metabolic systems to metabolize a lot of this stuff. So if something you're giving to a rat, if it causes them some toxicity, probably not going to be very good for the human being. So we really use animals as kind of a, the canary in the coal mine, so to speak. We expose animals to these compounds just to see, and we don't try to kill them. We just try to see where you start to see some toward effects. And then once you get so far, you go, okay, we're good. We don't want to just purposely kill the. You never do a study. A study would never get approved by the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee if death was an endpoint.
Right.
That's not. No. You will do a study to see what type of untoward effects, if there are any, and you can kind of as scientists know what you're looking for.
Sure.
And when you start to see certain hallmarks of a study that this is going in a bad direction, you'll stop it.
Sure. And I don't think people realize either that when you do these studies, because I've done rat pup studies myself before pharmacy school, but when I got my feet wet in research, the lab is these animals are fed 3 times a day. Yeah. They're kept comfortable. Like there's if you're going to do some type of surgical procedure, like we had to do when we were doing the cecal ligation and puncture to study sepsis, they were under anesthesia. They never felt any pain. They were given medications if necessary. And these little rat pups, man, I mean, you would purposefully induce a state where they're not going to make it if you keep it going, just to see how they respond to it. And a lot of these little rat pups, as soon as you saw the markers you were looking for, you stopped, you reversed the procedure, and then they lived just like normal, and they responded pretty quickly. Right. But there's a lot of steps in there to keep it humane and keep it ethical that people don't realize are part of the game.
No, people aren't out there purposely torturing animals. Yeah. That's just not, that does not happen. And if you think that's the case, then you're just stupid. You don't know, you don't understand.
Yeah.
We go to great lengths to make sure that the animals are taken care, are humanely treated.
You've got vets on staff that all that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's just, I mean, the animals oftentimes get better care than most humans. I guarantee that the case. But you have to have you have to have animal research, because without it, we wouldn't have it on the market.
Right.
You wouldn't have any surgical procedure on the market. So animals have saved. Animal research has saved millions of people's lives simply because of what we learned about whether a drug or a procedure or a disease for that matter. So it's essential.
Yeah.
Without animal research, you would not have our current state of medicine. Just would
And
ball game.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's super important. And like, I think it's important to, and again, it's to the audience listening, when you're trying to interpret research and when you're Googling it and trying to figure out, if this paper is going to translate, if it's something you should pay attention to, you have to look at what study design it was. Was it in animals? And then after you see the negative effects in animals, okay, is there any human clinical trial data that backs that up? So you have to do a little bit, you have to do your homework, so to speak, and it's not the easiest thing to do, but all the time you see people going, oh, well, this mouse study confirmed that this, food additive or whatever causes cancer. It's like that doesn't occur. And then you've alluded to earlier with supplements that, a lot of these drugs have potent insecticides in there just as a defense mechanism. Well, that whole defense mechanism concept has just taken the nutrition world by storm. And there's these, I don't want to name drop him, but like, I don't know if you know who, I'll tell you about it off the recording. Yeah. He's a nutcase. Anyway, his whole spiel is, plants are toxic and trying to kill you because of plant defense chemicals. He put out a video recently just dogging on oatmeal saying there's acid in here and it's going to absorb all these minerals and chelate them. So you're going to cause nutritional deficiencies and blah, 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 blah. And people eat that up. Like, oh, yeah, I hate vegetables. They taste bad. And exactly, I'm definitely not eating them now because this guy in the grocery store is telling me that kale is bullshit. And it's got all these defense chemicals. So like, it's just crazy.
Yeah. We talk about phytic acid, so phytic acid can complex a lot of metal, a lot of metals like iron and stuff, but phytic acid does not get absorbed. The bioavailable phytic acid is virtually zero.
Yeah.
All right. So now what's really interesting is that your body makes phytic acid. Okay. So there's a reason it's doing it. But so you get, it all boils down to the fact that a lot of these guys that, like you say, that start waving the bloody rag, and oftentimes they just don't exactly everything they can be, they're just putting on, they're putting out some very, some bad information.
Yeah.
So
it's also when you cook things that are high in phytic acid, a lot of that phytic acid's destroyed through the cooking process. Yeah. So again, then you're talking about even less phytic acid you're being exposed to, and its bioavailability is zero. So it may complex some stuff to a degree, but if you're eating enough of a well-balanced diet, you're outdo any effects that phytic acid may be having.
Exactly. So, that's like saying, if you get on the whole phytic, it's like saying apples are deadly. Apples are a great source of phytic acid, but
there's people on social media that will argue that fruits are toxic and killing us. I mean, you see it all the time. Commonly referred to, they're coated with pesticides. I guess herbicides and things like that, like process that are causing all these issues. And in reality, my first retort to that is, okay, well, you won't always wash your vegetables and your fruit, baking soda, vinegar, whatever you want, you can wash them. That'll get rid of the pesticides. Very little leaches into the actual fruit itself or whatever.
Exactly.
Or you could go, well, if let's just not use any herbicides or pesticides, then we don't have any crops because they'll all get destroyed and eaten by the bugs and the animals that are going to feed on them. So
it's a fine balance.
Sure.
As you know, one of my favorite mottos is everything in moderation. So if you go off on a tangent one way or the other, invariably good things usually don't happen.
Sure.
But everything in moderation, but you have to, and you also have to, the information that you get, you have to moderate too, because there's a lot of junk science out there too. A lot of people that are putting out that are, they'll take one thing and
run with
just
it.
go off, like you say, go off on some crazy tangent, and it has no relevance whatsoever. So you just have to, consumers, they need to educate themselves, and they're looking at podcasts, and they're listening to podcasts, and they're trying to educate themselves, but even then, you can get miseducated
For
by
sure.
people that don't really know what's going on.
For sure.
So, and I certainly don't claim to know everything there is to know about
Neither do I. I
everything
mean, that
dietary
would be, we'd
supplements.
be both be pretty
I
ignorant to
I would
claim
be,
otherwise.
that would be the apotheosis of hubris, and that's not me. I
Right.
can't do that.
We both are, you taught me growing up, stay in your lane. And if you don't know, it's fine to admit that you don't know. Then
Hell yeah, absolutely.
network and find someone who does know. I mean, you
Right.
have
And
tons
never
of
be afraid to say I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. It depends. Well, it depends on X factor, or in this context, maybe. Like, there scientists who use that phraseology is, it sounds like we're trying to not answer your question, but in reality, we're trying to get you to think more as to there's more nuance to it
Yeah, exactly.
than
And if I don't know something, I'll freely admit it. I don't know it, but I will certainly
figure it out.
do the research and try to find out and answer for you if that's possible based on the evidence that's out there. Um, and so that's another nice thing, is that pharmacists
Hmm.
are well trained to make sense out of all the literature that's out there, and can extract what's useful and what's not useful, and what's applicable and what's not applicable. And so that's why I think pharmacists are some of one of the probably not the only, but they're trained in medicine, they're trained in pharmacology, they're trained, they have such a broad um, experience with regards to chemistry and pharmacology and medicine and physiology and da 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 da. Doesn't mean that physicians aren't, but when it comes to medications and dietary supplements, I'm going to put much more of my faith in a well-educated uh, pharmacist than I am going to any other type of healthcare professional, and that's just because I under from.
Right. And
Understand what
I think it's kind of cool to see how you're starting to see that physiology is like, because if you watch a TV commercial. We're one of the few nations. I think us and New Zealand are the only people that do direct to consumer advertising for drugs, which I don't really
Right.
think is useful, because you can't ask your
I
doctor
think
to.
that's the dumbest thing
It's
that ever
so
happened, but
stupid. You can't ask your, hey doc, I saw a commercial on TV last night for Skyrizi. Can I have a prescription for that? It's like, that's a $15,000 drug for an autoimmune condition you do not have.
yeah.
So,
Don't get me started on
oh yeah,
that.
we
That's
won't
that's an
go
old
down that
time
rabbit hole.
pharmacist. Don't go down it.
You're starting to see on these supplement commercials, or these even drug commercials too, ask your doctor or pharmacist, which is good, because he used to say ask your doctor if you have any questions.
Yeah.
When in reality, if it's a herbal dietary supplement, there's a lot of there. I'm sure there are docs out there. I know a handful of them that are pretty well versed in it. One
Oh
of my
yeah.
buddies
Oh
that
yeah.
is pretty
Absolutely.
good in dietary supplements also happens to be a pharmacist. But so
Yeah.
he's but I, even patients reckon you're going to know more in the supplement than my doctor will.
Yeah. And there's a lot of naturopaths out there that
Yep, naturopaths are good too.
a lot of conventional physicians will poo-poo naturopaths, but when it comes to dietary supplements, you'd be hard pressed that knows more about them than a naturopath. Um,
The only problem I
but
have with I won't even say have with naturopaths, it's that I feel like, and this is just my opinion, so I'm not speaking for anyone else here. I think there's a middle ground anywhere. I don't want to be
Sure.
all in on the pharmacy camp. I don't want to be all in on the
Yeah.
supplement camp. Like, we can
Yeah.
work together just like we're supposed to as healthcare professionals anyway.
Yeah.
Natural solutions are freaking fantastic if you can do it in a safe way and work with your naturopath, who also collaborates with your pharmacist, who's also all in the loop, so we're all on the same page. That's where it's going to be most beneficial. I think we do a
Yep.
really poor job of, even as healthcare professionals, of putting other professions in boxes and just not touching it. Like,
Yeah.
oh, naturopaths, they're not credible. He's just a pharmacist. They just know about medications, or they're just an MD, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's unfortunately still a lot of that. There always will be, but yeah, naturopaths, we work with a lot of them, and they're
Yeah.
very well versed on supplements, but they still ask us pharmacists a lot of questions because they do not know the herb drug interaction stuff.
No, they don't know that. And another thing that's it's just now, we're doing a lot of research in this area now. I've been barking about it for years just because I'm a pharmacist, and just because you've got a diet, one thing that have an advantage over other healthcare professionals, and that is dosage forms, dosage form performance. And just because you've got a product that's in a capsule or a soft gel capsule or a tablet, um, you may know all there is to know about the botanical and the extract and this and that. Once you put it in a capsule or a soft gel capsule or a tablet or some other dosage form, it may or may not work.
Right.
We're doing some research now. I'm just
I
looking
was going to
at
ask you what you
whether
guys
or
over
not,
there at
yeah,
NCNPR are
we
doing.
kind of, this is not rocket science either. And companies are supposed to do this before these products go on the market, but we're finding out now that's not the case. But a lot of dietary
I'm
supplements just never
shocked.
disintegrate.
Uh,
They just never disintegrate. So if they never disintegrate,
goes-
you might as well just take your bottle of supplements and just go dump it in the commode because that's where it's going to go eventually.
Yeah.
So it's shocking. I mean, and some of these are pretty good companies too. So I'm not going to name any names at the moment, but there's dosage form performance is a big issue in the dietary supplement industry. And just because, now let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
So if your product won't disintegrate,
Yeah.
or if it does disintegrate and your compounds of interest can't go into solution, can't get dissolved in some shape, form, or fashion to be absorbed, they're not going to have any effect either.
Yeah. And the
And
only other way
so,
to get around that would be to figure out if it's a substrate for some sort of transporter. And even if
right.
that's the case, then you have to do the study to see if it is even effective on
Yeah,
said transporter. So there's way more. It's way.
exactly.
And again,
And then a lot of,
the only thing that's really
go ahead.
hurting you, I think, not even from we definitely touched on the potential for herb drug interactions and adverse effects and whatnot. At the end of the day, that's going to hurt your pocketbook more than anything else. And I mean,
Yeah,
I don't, drugs and life is expensive with all the way the economy is now. I really don't want to go to bat for a product or a supplement brand if I know that it's probably not going to get absorbed. I will actively
yeah,
tell patients, look, like this product, I could sell it to you, but I don't think it's going to do what you want it to do. And here's
yeah,
why. But I'll
yeah,
leave that decision up to you. And then when you explain it to patients, they're like, oh, well, yeah, I guess I don't need that. Then what else would you recommend? Or is there any other
exactly.
approach I need to take?
Yeah,
But those interactions are crucial, and it takes more than 5 minutes to kind of explain that to people sometimes.
yeah. And another thing that consumers have a tendency to either don't appreciate is the fact that a lot of the what I'm looking for, lesser known companies
Mm-hmm.
or less scrupulous companies
Mm-hmm.
will adulterate
Yeah.
their products.
Yeah.
So you'll have
Let's
the
get into
three
that
big
a little bit because I was gonna my last few questions before we kind of wrap up the show here. I want to kind of keep 2 hours is kind of the max I'd want to keep it at, but
yeah, okay,
I really wanted to get into not like duration a little bit because it definitely happens more so than not.
yeah,
And then we'll kind of piggyback off that on what product companies do you look for that Dr. Gurley would be like, I
yeah,
can get behind that.
yeah,
And then are there any supplements that you think the average everyday consumer, if they're not taking anything, would benefit from picking up at a pharmacy like mine? And then I think we can end it
okay,
after we touch on those things. So let's get into the adult. Okay, so you've
yeah,
mentioned adult products.
right,
Um, I guess I could speak for most people when my adulteration flag doesn't really kind of peak, I guess is a weird way to say it, until it's mainly in the fitness industry side of things where I see these products like weight loss meds can be adulterated with other medications. I know those exist. Some
yeah,
of these, testosterone boosting products are right now, so you never know what those could be adulterated with too. But
right.
I'd be interested to see what other ones you've come across
Yes.
of
So
clinical
there are three
relevance.
major. Yes. So there are three major categories that are notorious for having adulterated products.
Okay.
The first major category are all of your bodybuilding
Mm-hmm.
and your pre-workout supplements. Just classic. Oftentimes they're adulterated with either if you're looking at either anabolic steroids, or they're adulterated with certain sympathomimetic amines that are oftentimes prescription
Yeah,
medications,
Theophylline
or
was in a
oftentimes
remember showing you one time too.
oh yeah, or they're analogs of drugs that are out there that so your bodybuilding supplements, I'm not saying all bodybuilding supplements are adulterated.
Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Countdown to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Ah, feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now, only at BJ's.
But a lot of them are.
Yeah.
If it's claiming that if you're taking it to, to help you, massively increase your muscle mass, then that 9 times out of 10, those are going to be adulterated with some type of anabolic steroid.
Mm-hmm.
The major category of adulterated products are your sexual performance enhancing supplements. 9 times out of 10, those are going to be adulterated with your phosphodiesterase inhibitors like
Viagra, Cialis, those types of things.
The Vardenafil, Tadalafil, Sildenafil, or they're analogs of those. And it's shocking how many of those are the reason they work. Yeah, it's because they've got prescription medications or analog prescription medications in them. So
that's a big problem.
And then the other major category, so the bodybuilding, the sexual performance enhancement, and the other one are weight loss supplements. A lot of weight loss supplements will be adulterated with prescription medications too, Sibutramine, those things. Those are the 3 general categories. So anytime you're delving into those, there's always likelihood that there could be some adulteration, or even some contamination for that matter.
Yeah.
So
what about CBD products? And you guys down here, okay. I know I want to bring up I didn't want to bring up CBD, but I was like, screw it, because I know that there's some adulteration issues, and a lot of people take CBD now. It's very popular. It's becoming very mainstream, but not all sources of CBD are the same. And honestly, you get what you pay for when it comes to CBD. So I know you guys do a lot of research down there, but I know you've dealt with some adulteration of that. So just kind of briefly for a couple minutes, touch on that, I guess.
So just a little background. So I'm at the National Center for Natural Products Research. And since 1968, the University of Mississippi has been supplying research grade cannabis to institutes of health, for over 50 years now. So we have some of the, we have the best marijuana researchers in the world here, so we can grow it, we can characterize it, everything. I mean, it's just crazy. So the whole CBD and the hemp, it's in our wheelhouse. And so we did a study a couple of years ago, just looking at a wide variety of CBD containing products in the state of Mississippi. And only one product out of the 50 that we studied had what was on the label.
Wow.
Most of them either had nothing in it at all. Some had more than what was on the label. Now these are supposedly not have any THC or tetrahydrocannabinol, the active ingredient in cannabis. It's it has the psychotropic effects. Some products had, one product had almost 50% THC in it, that's probably a very popular product at the time.
Yeah.
And what was really concerning to us was a lot of them had that were adulterated with synthetic cannabinoids. And synthetic cannabinoids are extremely problematic. They can cause a whole litany of adverse health effects. So you really have to do your homework and want to get a CBD product. And if you get them at a gas station, Lord knows what you're getting.
Pills, I guess. It's a pretty good rule of thumb.
If nothing else learns anything from this podcast, never buy dietary supplements from a gas station. All right, just don't.
You would think that would be common knowledge, but it's not.
Yeah, well, That right there will save thousands of lives if you just do that.
Yeah,
So
it's funny because what people don't realize too is pharmacies CBD is almost expected to be in pharmacies now as an option you could purchase, and
Yeah.
it per law, and most states are like this. I haven't come across a state in order that I think it's actually maybe federal. I'm not entirely sure,
Yeah.
but it has to have less
Yeah.
than 0.3% THC
Right.
legally for a pharmacy to sell it. And if you can't, if 1 out of 50 in Mississippi
Right.
that you may want to buy has what the label says, then yeah, that makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up when I'm going to decide
Yeah.
which product I want to carry. Because at the end of the
Right.
day, if I don't do my homework and something bad to my patients, I am in trouble. So
Exactly. And so now, that was 2 years ago.
Mhm.
Now things can change a lot in 2 years.
Sure.
And so are there still crappy products out there? Absolutely. Are there some good? Absolutely. And the FD, we're still up in the air as terms of, is CBD going to be a supplement or is going to, so you were talking about hemp versus, so cannabis, is two general categories. You've got hemp versus non-hemp.
Mhm.
Hemp is cannabis that contains less than 0.3% THC by dry weight.
Mhm.
Anything that's above 0.3% THC by dry weight is not hemp. All
Mhm.
right. That's
Non-hemp.
marijuana.
Yeah.
And so it's, you can't sell that that's not legally, you can't sell. You can sell illegally all day if you want to, but legally you can't. So,
I think you can get Delta 9
yeah,
THC here in
so when you've
Texas,
got
but I'm not entirely positive if that's true or not. I think you
yeah, oh,
can.
well, you got there's medical marijuana, and
Mhm.
some states have recreational, and that's all well and good. Nothing wrong with that. Each state, whatever. But each state has their own rules and regulations when it comes to marijuana and hemp and so on and so forth. But if you're into buying, you just want something that only has CBD in it. There are some very reputable companies out there that put out good, high quality products, but you're going to have to pay for it.
Mhm.
So one of my rules of thumb is if you're not paying $100 a bottle for, or for CBD product, you're probably not having any in it, or there's probably some other things, or so good CBD is going to cost you.
Yeah,
It's just the nature of the beast.
at my pharmacy, we carry one brand. I don't know if you know who One Farm CBD is, but they're pretty reputable, and they go through they spend a lot of money to make sure that their product is what it is.
Yeah.
And because of that, I would say on average, I mean, I would say I think the cheapest bottle we sell is in the like $80 range, and it just goes up from there. And I can be pretty confident, as I know the reps and I've seen what all extra funding they have to do to get through the hurdles. And you get what you pay for with CBD. I don't like to say that up saving people money and trying to find the best deals and stuff, but CBD is not one of those things that I want to play around with. And if I want it, I'm gonna seek out the more expensive one.
Yeah. And it's got some great, some excellent effects.
Mhm.
So you can put a stigma on anything, but everything is, marijuana, medical grade marijuana has its benefits. CBD has its benefits. If you're getting CBD, summer, if you're going to spend money on something, you at least want to know, what's on the label is actually in the product. And you'd be shocked at how oftentimes that's not the case.
Yeah. So who,
CBD, but supplements in general.
So, okay. So now that we've kind of touched on that and the importance of it, obviously I know who to look out for and which brands I think are. Obviously, you guys do studies for these for these supplement companies as well to get your stamp of approval. So, who are some of the ones that, let's say I was not just shopping at my pharmacy where we carry kind of higher end pharmaceutical grade stuff, let's be honest, not everyone can afford, and I'm not going to push those on anybody. But like, let's say you're going into, I'm not going to recommend C. I don't like going to GNC, even though it's because when all the dietary supplements, you can mess with them a little bit. But like, let's say you're going into Costco or an HEB, and you're wanting to find something. Are there any type of label markings you look for, brands that you guys know that are rebel?
Sure. So there are certification programs out there, and not all certification programs are equal either. So, um, in my opinion, and I'm not paid by anybody. I don't have
Right. We have
any
no
financial
financial interest
ties
here
to
at the
any
Wellness Transcription
companies
Podcast
I'm
either.
about to mention. Here's my disclaimer: I don't have any financial dealings with any of these companies I'm about to name. But in my opinion, if I'm going to recommend somebody, just get a general dietary supplement, whether it be
A multivitamin.
vitamin D, or whether it be echinacea, or St. John, whatever. In my opinion, the company that has the highest quality on the market right now is Nature's Resource.
Yeah.
And Nature's Resource they follow the USP standard for dietary supplement monographs.
For the average listener, USP stands for United States Pharmacopoeia, correct?
So the US is it's an acronym for the United States Pharmacopoeia. United States Pharmacopoeia is an organization, or is an organization that's been around since 1820. And they pretty much set standards for medications, prescription medications, as well as a lot of dietary supplements. Now, not all dietary supplements, but they're in the process constantly doing new supplements. But if you have a product that has the USP, and it will say USP, and you can go to the United States Pharmacopoeia or the USP website, and you'll see what the certification looks like on the product. But Nature's Resource is one of the few companies. There's a few others that follow the rigorous standards set forth by the USP. So any product that has the USP certification, you can guarantee that what's on the label is actually in the product, and that product is actually product. You'll be shocked at, and we were talking about adulteration earlier. I want to backtrack just a second.
Sure, go for it.
You can have adulteration with with prescription medications or those kinds of things, but you can also economic adulteration, which is plants that look kind of similar to your plant, but they're a lot cheaper and they're really not the same thing. So you can have economic adulteration. So you might be looking for CBD oil, and in reality, it's just got olive oil in it. And that's all. So that's kind of an example of maybe an economic adulterant. So it's not a harmful product, but it's just not the product that is claimed on the label.
Yeah. So is Nature's Resource, is that Nature Made? Are those the same guys? Is that what?
Am I thinking?
Yeah, you said Nature's Resource. Nature Made, I know the bottle at Kroger that's yellow and green.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, those guys.
Nature's Resource and Nature's
Nature
Made.
Nature's Made. And then I know
Nature's out there.
Yeah, there's there Nature's Bounty, Nature's there's a ton of them, and
Nature's Bounty, Nature Made. It may be Nature.
It is Nature Made. I'm pretty positive. Nature Made, and then Costco. If you're a Costco member, Kirkland Signature's line of stuff is a lot of those are USP.
Signature, they're all USP, absolutely. So Kirkland Signature, Nature Made, those are the ones that follow USP guidelines for supplement quality.
Yeah,
and that's about as good as it.
Yeah, we carry a lot of the big ones that we carry at the store, and again, we carry kind of more tailored stuff. So Capsulations is a big one.
They're a good one.
They're good. They especially because in my neck of the woods down here in Austin, you have a lot of people with allergies and people that are gluten free for whatever reason. They want to seek out those without allergens and stuff, which is totally fine. I don't know. Orthomolecular is another one that we carry.
Okay.
They're pretty good. Zymogen is another one, and then really, as far as higher end ones, those are the ones that we carry because that's just what our clientele base likes and demands.
Yeah.
So. But if you're going to try to save the best bang for your buck and kind of cover yourself on a budget, Nature's Made is what I recommend to my athletes.
Yeah, you can't beat Nature's Made. Nature's Made, Nature's Resource, Nature's Bounty. A lot of the ones that have nature, there's a couple of nature ones that's not good, but those three are pretty good. But Nature Made, they're one of the USP. They follow the USP guidelines and they have the certification. With regards to that's just supplements in general. And I don't want people to think that that supplements are not good and they're not unsafe, because the vast majority of supplements out there are safe. The vast majority of supplements out there have some efficacy, and they serve they have a lot of benefit. medical benefit, whatever. But with regards to other certifications, with regards to
Yeah.
any sports supplement that has an NSF, and NSF today just stands for NSF.
Yeah.
Way back in the day, it stood for National Sanitary Foundation, which sounds a little,
Yeah.
but just NSF. But NSF, they go through and if you pass their certification criteria, your product has what's it's not adulterated with anything that's going to get you it's not will get you deemed on a banned substance list. And so indications, those products are, you can go to the bank with those.
Yeah, I think they're great. When I was doing my master's thesis, when I was doing stuff with the baseball team that I played on, a lot of them were, I mean, you have to be really careful with the NCAA of what supplements you're taking, because a lot of these kids are in the gym, they're on pre-workout, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you never know what you have. And granted, you may be able to get away with your run-of-the-mill drug test, but some of these big D1 institutions, that can wreck your career, or ruin your eligibility if you're not careful.
Yeah.
Supplements you're taking. So that's a good point, for sure, because
absolutely,
not a lot of people think about that either. Or even if your work drug screens you as a part of the hiking a supplement, and you don't know much about it, you could get dinged for an adulteration thing, and you may have no idea.
Yeah, you'd be shocked at how many.
Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Countdown to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
College athletes or professional athletes, have failed a drug screen, and it was a dietary supplement, and that supplement would have been adulterated, and that's why I didn't pass. So, and you got to do your homework, and it's not hard to do.
Right.
You just got to make an effort. So
yeah, I really like consumer. Ever since you on the Consumer Labs website, they're really good.
Is a great little website to go and get good information about products in general, dietary supplements. I'm the founder of ConsumerLab.com. Good friend of mine. I got no financial ties with them whatsoever. But if you are a consumer, and there's something you've heard about, or a supplement that you're thinking about getting into, go to ConsumerLab.com. Some of the information is readily available. Sometimes you may have to buy.
Yeah, a little pay.
Like $20 a year. I mean, it's
nothing. I think it's 30.
User, okay, if you're a supplement user, that'd be the best $30 you ever spend in terms of, because what Consumer Lab does is they analyze products too. Not only analyze them for content, but they also analyze them for adulteration and contamination. And they list the names of the products that pass and fail. So it's a great place to go. There's a bunch of, we could have a podcast just on information sources sometime.
Sure. Yeah. There's a lot there that people may not think about, for sure. I look stuff up all the time, especially at work when I don't know a more obscure product, if someone's coming to me, but this is the last thing I'll wrap up with, because I want to kind of get your opinion and I'll kind of tell mine. So if some friend of yours, or someone you're work closely with, or a friend, family member, if they come up to you and go, hey, I want to, all at the Wellness Transcription Podcast, my whole thing is giving you the information that you can use to improve your lifestyle and wellness long term. So that's going to be different for everyone, but every time someone's going to ask you, what supplements would you recommend? So from a general perspective, if you had to pick a few, which ones would you, that's based off of your expertise in the clinical literature and what you've seen in here, what are the supplements that you would recommend just about everybody take, regardless of how their diet is?
You mean specific,
I guess,
brands, or specific?
Oh, not brands, but like supplements in general. And I can kind of go into my stack and what I like to, because I try to take a less is more approach with supplements. Because you can get into the weeds and just start stacking stuff on, but it gets really expensive.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you what I take.
I mean, you don't have.
No, I'm not going to mention brands. I'll just mention what I as with anything, you can cover a lot of stuff with a good, well balanced diet. That's just from a nutrition perspective, it's hard to beat that.
Sure.
And then from a supplement perspective, a good multivitamin, like you mentioned, pure encapsulations. They're one day. I think it's called one
Day multi, or one multi. One
Yeah,
multi.
that's an excellent multivitamin. I take that. Um, I take some phytosomal. I take phytosomal curcumin.
Okay.
A reason that as a guy my age, that's a good thing. There's another supplement that's about to come on the market that has a combination of some really interesting combination that can have some really positive benefits on your lipid biochemistry and when it officially, I'm one of the testers, so to speak. Once it does come on the market, we can talk about that in more detail.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about and who, but we
know what
won't.
I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
I do.
Yeah. So I take that. I can tell that it has some benefits. At least I think that's the case. What else? I'll take vitamin E on occasion. Again, nature's made. There's not a lot of supplements I take. Sometimes I'll take them for a while, then I'll stop.
Sure.
And just
I'm the same way.
But I don't. If someone is into a particular supplement, and I'm cool with that. Again, supplements have a lot of benefits. Are they a good balanced diet? No.
Right.
I mean, they supplement a
Exactly. That's why they're called
diet.
supplements.
That's why they're called supplements.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
They're not called essentials.
Right.
They're called supplements.
Yeah. I take personally, I take a good multivitamin, and a B complex, based off some prescription medications I take that can deplete certain things, a magnesium supplement. That's a whole nother topic for a podcast that I think no one talks about. Our drug-induced nutrient depletion is huge.
Oh yeah.
And
you're one of the leading experts on all that. So I would defer to your expertise on that, because it does. Can drugs deplete your nutrient? Can drugs deplete nutrients? Oh, absolutely, they can.
100%. Yep.
And that's something it just flies right over their head. You ask most healthcare professionals about drug nutrient depletion, and they look at you with this,
deer in the headlights kind of look.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very important aspect, and it's if nothing else, if you're taking any prescription medication, you should at least take a multivitamin from a good source.
Yeah, I do multivitamin. Occasionally I'll do vitamin D. I mean, that's big now, but like I said, I'm in the pharmacy all day. I don't get outside as much as I like to, so I'm in with that. What else do I do? Creatine is a good one. I do take creatine a good bit, so when I'm exercising. Caffeine I can't tolerate too well, so I have to be really careful. Discussed. And then the last thing that I take on a routine basis, I do, believe it or not, I take a fiber supplement. So I really like. Yeah. I like Metamucil. Like, it tastes good, but like, it's a good way to hit that, goal of fiber that not a lot of people hit, and we'll go into that in other podcasts. But
you can never get enough fiber.
That is true. You make the gut microbiome with,
especially if you're taking especially if you're taking vitamin D. Vitamin D can lock you up pretty quick. So always, if you're taking a vitamin D supplement, you need to be taking, you need to eat some bran on a regular basis, just to keep
good old oatmeal.
I know for a fact vitamin D just constipates the hell out of me.
Yeah, it's important you mention that. It's a counseling point that I have for patients too, especially with COVID. When COVID was a big thing,
absolutely,
vitamin D shot up. Which is fine. And it's, again, very rarely do you ever see any type of toxicity issues with vitamins, even though the fat soluble ones are the ones that you have to kind of be a little wary of, especially if you're throwing 50,000 units on all the time.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
But, vitamin D deficiency is super common. So supplementing is a bad idea, but yes, making sure you're getting that fiber is apart from exercising and trying to, watch your caloric intake, fiber intake is a huge lever to pull. And I think that's a one that not a lot of people think But we've covered
Yep.
a ton of stuff. We're
Okay.
running on 2 hours now, I think, and I
Okay.
could sit down and talk with you all day long.
Oh yeah.
I'm biased. I never really got a chance to tell you in pharmacy school that like it it was really cool, even though we have the same mannerisms, and that was kind of weird. I I really appreciate the expertise that you bring to the table, because I couldn't tell you if I wanted to find another dietary supplement expert, I'd be looking for a long time.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and my expertise comes from the fact that I'm here from almost day one. I was a veteran of the Ephedra wars. A lot of the people that I was a pariah in the industry for a long time. And then they realized that after the whole the herb drug interaction stuff, and the fact that, not everything, I've actually, a lot of guys that wanted to crucify me, 20 years ago are my best friends now,
mhm.
because I don't have an agenda.
Right. I think that's important.
I'm just a science guy, and we find stuff and we publish it. And if it's good, we'll publish it. If it's bad, we'll publish it. I don't have an agenda.
Right.
And so it is what it is. And so, I'm one of the biggest advocates for dairy supplements, and I can also be one of its biggest critics.
Mhm.
It just depends on what we're talking about.
For sure. I
So
think that's super
again, and I
important, because there's so
yeah,
many people
absolutely.
out there that just assume there's bias rampant in everything. And that's another topic with research too, is people say, well, who funded the study? Did the supplement industry fund it?
Yeah,
And it's like, you have to report any potential bias just to get a paper approved or a study
yeah,
approved to do it.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
those sources are readily available if you look for them. And there's nothing wrong with um, Coca-Cola, or I guess let's say like a corn lobbying industry to fund a study on corn, because they want to see if there's benefits and stuff. So it's not all malicious like people
Yeah,
think. Even though there are, but don't get me wrong, there's definitely some people that do that, and it needs to be called out when it occurs. But
yeah,
again,
yeah,
just saying, "Oh, well, that was funded by the dairy industry, so we can just completely dismiss it." It's like, no, we can't. Like,
yeah.
again,
Oh
there's
yeah.
not many institutions funding these types of studies, so it's funding
No,
is
you're
hard to
right. I
come by.
mean, it is. It's very hard to come by. I mean, there are, and we could get into funding sources a little bit later. But there are. You can get the National Institutes of Health has the National Center for Complementary Integrative Health. They have dietary research. The industry funds a lot of research, and some of it's quite good.
Mhm.
And it's like you always have to source. And then a lot of time your company will fund a study. Sometimes it may seem over the top, and sometimes it may actually be to their detriment. A
Mhm.
lot of times they may not get published because the company's like, we don't want to get that
Yeah,
out there,
yeah, yeah.
But
That's part of it,
I know,
science, though.
yeah, I have published stuff with companies that turn out too well, and we publish it anyway.
Mhm.
It's like, hey, this is here it is. Um, well, what that does is it tells the company something they need to know.
Correct,
Bingo.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you don't know what you don't know, right? So,
right,
it's
right.
important. But yeah, I think it's, well, like I said, I'll have you on many times, because we
Sure.
can cover a lot of different things, and
I've enjoyed it.
we have
We can
other
talk.
friends on and stuff too that are colleagues of
Sure.
yours, because I'd love to,
Yeah.
I don't wanna name drop him. I guess I can. Uh, I'd love to have Doctor is El Sholi, is he still there?
Yeah, if you
Have
can get
him on.
Dr. Sully, Mr. Marijuana,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a big push for marijuana nowadays, and in certain individuals at certain ages, like there's definitely concerns that we need to be aware of. Um,
Yeah.
but there's also benefits too, and it takes people like us just kind of
Well,
rooting it out.
I mean, I know most of the movers and shakers in the dietary supplement industry world.
Mhm.
And if there's a particular topic, I mean, I could name off probably 20 people right now that would just love to be on your podcast and would give out some phenomenal information on just about anything. I mean, from, yeah. So anytime
Yeah,
there's a topic that you're interested in, let me know. I'll
sure.
find you somebody that'll be happy to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. Like I said, I wanted an
Yeah.
outlet for the education that we do have, because if you don't use it, you lose it. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where this goes. I just got to figure out all the editing and sound and stuff that
Sure.
comes with the territory. But Dad, I
Sure.
appreciate you. I appreciate you being on. I don't want to
Yeah.
take up too much more of your time, because like
No,
I
not at
said,
all. I've enjoyed it.
it's
It's been
been it's
fun.
been fun. if people had this last thing I'll say, if people wanted to find out more about what the NCNPR does, is there a website they can go at and
Yeah, go to the University of Mississippi's, just their University of Mississippi website, and then on the search, if you'll just search NCNPR and National Center for Natural Products, we got a whole web page there.
Cool.
But that's the easiest way, is just to go through the University of Mississippi web page, and then just I think it's under research.
Yeah.
They've got a research thing, but if you just search either NCER or National Center for Natural Products Research, all the cool things that's going on here. I mean, it's a cool place to work. I mean, like I said, the reason I had been doing clinical research with them or for them. I was doing most of their clinical studies for many years when I was at UAMS. But now that I'm here, I'm instead of having to, I can just walk down the hall to, one of the leading experts on
whatever it is,
a certain aspect of either analyst. And these guys can do, it's amazing what they can do. It's amazing the resources they have here. It's one of the best kept secrets, not only in the nation, but certainly in the state of Mississippi. The NCNPR is no more outside of the university than it is on the university campus. So that's a public relations issue that they need to get fixed. But I mean, you can get Dr. El Soli. There's just I could get you access to for this podcast. Nobody else would podcast be able to get in regards to these types of topics. So just let me know, and
I will.
We'll make it happen.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll have you back on multiple times, Dad. I really appreciate it. And guys, this kind of wraps it up for us at the Wellness Transcription Podcast. We hope you learned something. If you look for them, there's people vast amounts of knowledge that are more than happy to provide that for you. So we're going to keep these episodes rolling, and hopefully we'll have more cool guests on. And Dr. Gurley, I'll have you back on. I hate saying that, Dr. Gurley.
Call me
Dad.
Just call me Dad.
I'll have you back on soon. Like I said, I'm biased, so I appreciate it, and we'll end the episode here.
Okay, I enjoyed it.
Thanks,
Thank
Dad.
you.
Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Wellness Transcription Podcast. If you wanted to continue to support the show, please do us a huge favor and like, follow, and leave us a 5-star review on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. Your support and feedback mean the world to us, and it also helps us to continue to bring you guys high-quality content moving forward. You can follow us on Instagram at the Wellness Transcription Podcast. That way you can stay up to date on all of our upcoming content and special guest interviews. As always, be well, and God bless.
Your Space Coast vacation is preparing for liftoff. Start counting down now. 10, 9, 8, 7. It's time for a beach vacay that feels like heaven. 6, 5, 4. Come explore Melbourne and the beaches. 3, 2, 1. It's time for some rocket-filled fun. Count down to your best beach vacation ever on Florida's Space Coast. Launch your planning now at visitspacecoast.com. That's visitspacecoast.com.
Feel the whoa with Listerine at BJ's. You can save $2.50 now on Listerine products like Total Care Anti-Cavity Fluoride Fresh Mint Mouthwash or Cool Mint Pocket Packs Fresh Breath Strips at your nearest BJ's location. Experience the feeling of a million germs zapped in seconds with Listerine. Discount available through December 24th. Save now only at BJ's.